Hello and good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Who knows what time of day it is where you are, but my name is Jameson Dean, and I'm the host of this podcast, Rhodes Wellness Podcast, and today we have special guest, Victoria Mercedes Rose. So please introduce yourself. Who are you, more so than what I've already said? What do you do, and maybe even how do you do it?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am a graduate of the Professional Counseling Diploma with Rhodes. I am a counselor and coach. I am a student of life, a teacher of all that I've learned, and living in my hometown, Gibsons, on the Sunshine Coast here in BC. And I have my actual cat, Bella, who might be in the background at some point. So I think it's important to mention her because she's a part of the crew here. First thing that came to mind when you asked that question was a soul in a human body. And sometimes I struggle with that question of who are you? Because it's like, I'm so many things. And how do I put myself in one small box to deliver here for you today? But for the sake of the theme of what we're doing here, I think that sums it up.
Yeah. To fitting in boxes or not, to show up in a way that is authentic, is real, and talks about the journey of a graduate from Rhodes Wellness College, now I believe almost 4 years out of graduation as a registered counselor in BC, taking on clients, right?
Yes.
Incredible. And with that, what have you learned in the last few years leading up to this moment about this work overall? Big question, I know, but
yeah, so much.
What do you think? How do you feel about this years later?
Yeah, and this being this journey.
Yeah, this journey as a soul in a body, as a counselor, seeing clients and seeing this thing called life and helping people feel seen and heard in their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, etc. What has that been like for you over the years, and how's that grown?
Yeah.
Or even what would your past self, maybe 6 years ago, say to your current self?
Yeah. So the latter question, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. I think so much of the beginning of stepping into the role as a counselor, there was so much imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to? And when I graduated or when I started Rhodes, I think I was about 25. So still quite young. And I remember actually, I got this feedback from this woman who was like, no offense, but like, what do I have to learn from you? You're only 25. And I was like, you have no idea what I've been through in the past 25 years. So I think that really crushed my sense of self-worth at that time. And that was like right before I was starting Rhodes. So I think that was just one of the many voices that are out there, right? Around being young, around even just these voices that we have in our head around self-doubt. Like, who am I to? What do I actually have to offer? And as the years went on, more and more, I'm starting to realize that it's less about my skill set, less about my education, less about my designation, and more about how I'm showing up for others, the relationship. I think one of the most beautiful things about a therapeutic relationship is like sometimes you are people's first secure attachment. Like, what an honor that is. And that what's most important is that we show up with integrity, authenticity, with love, that unconditional positive regard. And I I think I remember hearing that then and knew that then, but it's another thing to like really embrace it and embody it and integrate that knowing in your nervous system, really. Because, at first there's that fear and that disconnect from the truth of what this work is.
Wow, I'm just kind of letting that simmer.
Mm-hmm.
I concur. And the fact that you were willing and brave enough to go out there and do that and confront yourself enough so you were comfortable and or confident enough in yourself to therefore hold space for others and what's coming up for them, what's bothering them, what's triggering them, etc. That within itself is a big feat.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, did Rhodes program, the professional counseling diploma program, prepare you for that? Did it help you with that? How so?
Yeah. To a certain extent, largely. I think no matter where you graduate from, there's always going to be the essence of the unknown, especially for each of us as individuals. Where we land post graduation, whatever the program is going to be, likely different. Of course, there's going to be some overarching things. But what I believe sets Rhodes apart compared to what I've heard about other programs is not only the experiential style of teaching and learning, but the relationships and the sense of community. I went into Rhodes just starting to overcome the belief and the attachment to this narrative that I will never do public speaking. Had an experience I might share a bit about at some point where it was around 19 and it was like, I'm not ever doing that again. That was terrifying. That sucked. I'm not going there. And I had done one open mic night, reading a poem and doing some singing. And that was me kind of breaking past that fear. But what Rhodes really provided for me was the experience to continue to do that again and again, because in every course we have to do a presentation and a live demo. And I don't mean to scare any potential students away by saying that, but that really boosted my confidence so much, because not only was I receiving very specific constructive feedback in such a kind and loving and compassionate way, areas that I can improve, but the positive feedback of my strengths and my skills and my gifts. And to have that held in a container and to have that repeated to you again and again from multiple different people perspectives gave me a sense of confidence and security in myself as a practitioner and leader that I honestly didn't know was possible.
And it sounds as if you were taking that feedback as information, not tying too much emotion to it, and just seeing it as kind of like data that you were like, okay, I need to implement these potential points of data into my practice.
Mm-hmm.
And how I show up and help others and how I can improve upon it with your ego going like, oh my gosh, I should know this, or how didn't I know this, or I should know it all kind of mentality, being, always being that student that is continuing to learn.
Totally. And I think there's also something to be said about you can't really hide in a Rhodes classroom. Like you kind of can, you can take a back seat, but like I think in a lot of other programs, like you can kind of put on this facade or this mask of like, I know what I'm doing, like I got this. Whereas at Rhodes, like we really dig deep and we do our own personal work. So to witness all of your other colleagues or classmates of all different backgrounds struggling with essentially the same themes, yeah, there's something deeply like humbling about that. And like, oh, it's not just me. Like this is a thing that pretty much everyone experiences. Okay, like then I can be more gentle with myself. I can give myself permission to mess up or not be perfect.
I agree. And the
Yeah.
beauty of school is you get to learn and mess up and trip and fall and learn how to show up for others, but it's not detrimental to them if you trip and fall and stumble and aren't on your game per se, or as confident with your day. Overall, right? That's what you're experiencing and get to experience. And then if you're brave and willing enough, other people get to learn from that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, 20 like-minded people acting and showing up and helping others with their thoughts, etc., and holding space for them and becoming a trained and professional and or accredited counselor. Yet at the same time, there's so much learning in that. And I remember when I did my first, what we called fishbowl at the time, where 20 students are looking at you doing a coaching or counseling session. It was terrifying. But my instructor was like, there's so many great integral points here that we're going to talk about, that some of which you did, some of which you did not, that would have helped the session greatly. And we're going to talk about it right here, right now.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Yeah, totally. All eyes on you. And I think that kind of essence is also what it feels like to be in the role of leadership, to be someone that people are coming to for guidance, for support, to hold them through something. And yeah, to have that experience. I mean, of course, it's like an added layer of 20 sets of eyes on you. Um, but yeah, having that confidence within yourself to be able to contain what that brings up inside of us.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's always room for improvement. With that, I want to actually go back to something you mentioned of that person that says, what do you know at 25 some years old? What do you wish you could say now about that interaction to reflect and say what it's really about in terms of counseling in general? Anything coming to mind when I ask you that type of question that you would maybe say now with what you know from that, what do you know at 25 type of comment?
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots inside that could be reflected, but the first thing that comes to mind is it doesn't actually matter what I know. What matters is my quality of presence, how open my heart and mind are to the person in front of me, how grounded and contained I am, how much I'm able to empathize and extend and connect, but still remain autonomous in my own being so that there isn't that transference or countertransference. And that ultimately, in the way that I work, the client is the expert. And that I'm not actually here to tell them what to do or to give them advice. Although sometimes clients are like, please give me advice. And I'm like, well, if it were me, I'll give you a little piece. Because you want to really, and from the way that I learned, and I think we both learned, ask the right questions so the client guides themselves. And of course, what I have to teach in terms of tools and regulating practices are essential and important to the client's progress. But it's less about what I know for me and more about the quality of how I'm showing up for the other person.
I couldn't agree more. You said it so well. I don't like to include too much, I guess, ego in our conversations, but I think there's something there that is meeting your client with where they're at on that day, with their thoughts that they may share, their feelings that they might have because of those thoughts from previous experiences, and the behaviors that they might be having in general today, and showing up for them and letting them show up as they wish. And that you're not there to give it exact advice or direction because you know it all or know the way. You help them come to their own light bulb realization, moments of understanding about themselves and why they maybe did that, help them come to forgiveness within themselves about why they might have done that, and how they feel about it now, and can love themselves in that type of conversation with themselves that you hold space for. It's all about them and helping them feel comfortable talking about themselves.
Yeah, the healing power of holding someone in their emotional experience. Like that changes someone. And most people, from my experience, that come to therapy have either never had that or have not had that level or quality of it. And there is something transformative about that. I mean, I've been seeing my therapist that I met through Rhodes for 5 years now, and consistently. And yeah, I can say that she's been a secure attachment for me and has shown up for me in ways that no one ever had. And that has totally been one of the most powerful aspects of our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would similarly agree in respect to the helpers and healers that I've been seeing over the years as well. And, that person you can be so significantly vulnerable with, and they're trained to hold that space for you to say whatever you want, feel however you want. You can just lay there for 30 minutes and stare at the ceiling and say 3 words if you want. They're there to hold your space, your emotions and your feelings, etc. That it is, even if you don't want to go in a certain preferred direction in terms of them and their preferred direction, just hold them in all that is and let time and space kind of go away, because they may be overwhelmed by time and space and they just want to lay there and say a few words.
Mm-hmm.
So much beauty and potential growth in that, and opportunity from that in time with that healing journey that you might be supporting them in.
Totally. And maybe a last point to that I want to share is that the relationship takes time to build and deepen. And, it wasn't until 3 years in that I started to open up about some deeper stuff that I was subconsciously afraid of my therapist judging me for. And I will say that my therapist is listening, maybe we can chat about this. And all love. But I've felt when maybe there is a peak of judgment that comes up, or a part of her that becomes alive in the facial expression or in a way something is said. And I think that also is really beautiful and actually creates a sense of safety, because I'm like, oh, she's human. And I've also had clients give me feedback of like, what was that? Your face just did a thing. It's like, oh, we try to remain neutral, but the reality is it's a human relationship. And I think to be able to talk about that is really, a part of it as well.
Yeah, I hear you in that, and commend you in that, being open to that. And I think at the end of the day, we're all human. Some people say, we're just walking each other home. I think that's Ram Dass. We're all here just walking each other home, and that's beautiful and amazing. And we're not going to be necessarily always perfect or on the ball or compartmentalize everything perfectly to prevent 100% or 1,000,000% transference, from happening. It will happen at some points, and where we may slip up and not be a 1 bajillion% client centered.
Yeah.
It's just the way human dynamics and or behavior works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to mention.
Yeah.
As a real reality that can come up within sessions with clients, paying clients, and so on. Overall. And that brings, to your point, humility into it. Just like humility is key. And then that's like, oh, I see you, you see me. We kind of laugh a little, and then things feel lighter.
Totally. It brings the humanness into it. Absolutely. Yeah.
And love that. I love the humanness, because I'll share, I'll self-divulge and say, about 12 years ago, I realized I was a soul and I wanted to be somewhere else, not in this human body, because I didn't want to, nor did I know how to love this body and this mind, and that I didn't realize things could be more malleable, like in my brain and in my body, and that I could heal and that I could learn and grow to become better. And I realized I was not feeling my feelings to the extent in which I could have, because I had to be tough, be a man, and show up in the world and have and wear that mask, if you will.
Yeah.
And that was very, difficult. But years later, I look back and I kind of, I smile because he's come so far, because he's been willing and open and honest with his emotions and has had to lose a lot to gain a lot, in a sense, to move forward in a better way. So helpers, healers, therapists, coaches, etc., have allowed for that. And there's so much beauty and value in that. It's infinite. It's just like so invaluable. I could not put a price on that.
Yeah. I
So
agree.
helpers being there along the way that you can feel open and comfortable with, I think, are just so key to that journey. So anyone listening, please reach out and say something about what might be going on, and be willing and be brave enough to say, I am hurting. This doesn't feel great. I have some thoughts that I'm not as comfortable sharing. And usually those are the best thoughts to let out with a professional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Someone who's trained to hold them without judgment.
Exactly.
And then hopefully provide a foundation for the kind of relationship that you go then out and seek. You're like, oh, this quality of connection is actually possible. It's actually possible to not be judged, to be empathized with, to be fully seen in all that you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And obviously, to those listening, I think of the value then that's in that type of conversation and the outcome that could have with their lives, their perspective on their lives, the happiness that might bring them or reprieve that might bring them, and how that translates into their everyday life moving forward to improve their life in some way, possibly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's where the more potentially exciting work begins, moves forward with, that you can witness as their therapist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the creation of the new life. Yeah. So good.
Yeah, the zhuzh of life,
Yes, totally.
I have no idea how to spell zhuzh, but I love the
I love
idea
it.
of the zhuzh.
It's a great word.
Zhuzh. Oh man, is that even a word?
I
Oh,
think so.
you can tell we went
Yeah,
to
I've used it.
counseling school and not English school, that's for sure. Um, questions for you that I have as well is, what have you done in the last, say, 3-4 years that has helped you get to the point which you are now within your own practice and what you do?
Yeah.
Anything coming to mind in regards to personally, professionally? What has led to your
Yeah.
success?
Yeah. Foundationally, definitely the personal work. Because each step of the journey, there's been certain blockages or setbacks, parts of myself I've been faced with that have been extremely uncomfortable, sometimes very dark. These shadow aspects that a lot of us can go so much of our lives without looking at. And those come up when we are stepping into who we are becoming, stepping into a leadership role, or a phrase that I often use is like stepping into my power. The parts of me that are capable, that are strong, that know that they have something to offer this world. And as many parts of those that exist, there are the shadow aspects that I need to work through in order to be fully stepping into that part of me or embody it. And there is layers, and it's not this like I'm here now and I'm going to be over here now. It's like this incremental journey. So a lot of personal work. Starting private practice was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. When I started Embodied Life, I decided to burn through my savings and put everything I had into my business. Opened up my office, did the website. Perfectionist part of me, super active then. So we spent a lot of time on our branding and our graphics. Honestly, so grateful for the gifts of AI in terms of blockages that come up and just like a quick little doot, doot, doot. And it's like, oh, right, this whole other option that would have taken me days before to work through those blockages. Yeah, and so it wasn't successful at first. Like the clients were slow to come in. There was a lot of advertising, a lot of putting myself out there, marketing. I did kind of always. I did everything from Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads to flyers on the local bulletin board, handing out business cards, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been this like roller coaster of a journey. After the first few months of not working and just starting my business, I worked, various part-time jobs to supplement the income as I was building. And yeah, it still fluctuates. I think that's a part of one-on-one client work, entrepreneurship as well, is that it's not consistent. And, I think I'm gaining more skill and practice around how to implement that monthly, weekly, daily. Whereas at first it was really intimidating and overwhelming because my sense of security was like, oh, I don't have like the consistent income coming in every month. So yeah, the inner work and then the practical pieces.
I totally hear you and understand. Something I always say, it's not called a practice for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's a practice, a personal practice, entrepreneurially. You are the product, you are the service.
Yeah.
Clients aren't just going to necessarily fall out of the sky and come to you and pay you your rate, 8 hours a day. Many that take this as a second, third, fourth career transition might be used to a salary that is just a constant income. They know what they're making, and there's that idea of or feeling of security. And if in the event a graduate is going more entrepreneurially and only working for themselves and building up a client base, you're starting from nothing and trying to turn it into this ideal scenario of, let's say 5 days a week and 5 clients a day at $150 Canadian per session. Well, the difference between now and that is very significant.
Mm-hmm.
And it may take 8 years,
Yeah.
depending on your strategies, the ads you put out there, how you put yourself out there, the way you network and show up in the world and have that unique kind of value add or niche out there, and the way you angle it and the people you get in front of to help them come to you for something that they feel like you can help them with.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of idea, we talk about it in the business classes, especially in year 2 of the professional counseling diploma program. But it's sometimes jarring or hard to conceptualize or wrap your head around in terms of how to market yourself.
Totally.
That is authentic, so you don't feel as much like an imposter.
Yeah.
That right there is a whole thing within itself that I think a lot of people coming out of these programs work through, experience, experiment with, all these things, where it's not always like, okay, here's a counseling job at a counseling clinic, here's your salary, and here's your clients. That has happened and can or could, but what else are you doing to put yourself out there and network and find opportunity to flex your new skills?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So,
It takes practice to be seen, to put yourself out there.
exactly. And be sustainable with it and have habits that are built into your everyday life to allow for that.
Yes. And to do the work to, move past the blockages of fear of being seen.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
are you seeking, not a question for you, but a question for a potential listener is, are you seeking help? in those areas? Are you seeing a business coach? Are you seeing an ad specialist? Are you paying, somebody to help you build a website or a booking page? Are you getting on Psychology Today, which, accreditation and so on can help with, and these other platforms to help you feel or help you be wanted in general? And that idea of being wanted in this work is a whole nother thing that can emotionally have us feel not great and happy and confident about ourselves and how we're putting ourselves out there. But we have to remind ourselves that it's new and it takes time to be exposed to the right people that feel called to work with us.
Mm-hmm. Which requires being rejected again and again and again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I often find like this work kind of this, maybe it's not the most appropriate similarity, but it's kind of like dating. Like finding a therapist is like dating, because you sometimes go on many dates or first sessions or intake sessions and so on and don't feel connection or
Yeah.
vibes.
Yeah.
The kids call it, I don't know. So, there's that to it as well. And that's totally just the way the industry is.
Mm-hmm. It's part of the process.
That's right.
Yeah.
And everyone's journey is different. The classic saying that I'm probably going to poorly say, but you can't force the horse to drink the water.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You have to be willing and open and ready to help the horse drink the water when the horse wants to drink it, in terms of the healing that could be there for them.
Yeah. Totally. Another thing that came into my mind when you said that was the times that clients have been transparent and, I'm actually looking for something different. And the times where I've wanted to be integrity to my value as being of service, that's included sending them referrals to other counselors that might resonate with them more.
Yeah.
And that was a humbling experience of like, wow, look at me embracing this rejection and then offering them something else because I don't work for them. Like my inner child, inner teenager loved that. You're like, yeah.
Absolutely. And the willingness to do that and have that heart, and soul first and foremost, even though your head might be thinking, oh, for business, business wise, it might be helpful to have this client. And maybe they turn into a constant weekly or bi-weekly client. That is something that does happen or can, but we have to be okay with it not at all at the same time.
Totally. Yeah.
Because I know many therapists are like, come to me when you feel called to come to me. Or some might have a little bit different of an approach where it's like an agreed upon, bi-weekly session.
Yeah.
That the therapist knows that they want to book and that they're open and comfortable with, because a lot of therapists talk about their wanting their clients to have that desire to see the value in it, put enough time and effort into it, and or do the homework from the session, etc., to really have that growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even I'm considering implementing some of those values in my own practice of like ready to do the work, ready to continuously show up even when it gets uncomfortable. Not even for myself. I mean, partially for myself, but for the success of the client. Because there's so much beauty in the unconditional positive regard and like come as you are whenever you'd like. I think that can be really healing for a lot of people. And I think also a lot of people could really use a little bit of like holding their feet to the fire of, this is what this work is about. Are you ready to show up consistently for your own growth? Do you have the time and space in your life to do homework and to keep implementing this outside of session? Because the session is only 1 hour a week, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. What are you doing the other, hundreds of hours? Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And asking for that consent in that respect is, I think, really key for trained professionals to be about, is that, client A are you prepared to go about this in this way? And saying something like that gives you really great understanding to know, okay, what are they open and ready for?
Mm-hmm.
What might they be open and ready for? And what do they want to address now? So maybe they can get there and see value in getting there, if they even want to say, paint that picture or that narrative in their life.
Yeah.
And what might work for them that you can provide in terms of, do they want a little bit more narrative therapy focus? Do they want a little bit more CBT? Do they even know what that means or is? And can you educate them or explain to them what that is and see what they may say resonate with? So you can approach them a little bit differently than all the other clients to support them in their own unique way.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And for prospective students, that also happens over time. I think there was a lot of pressure I put on myself by the end of the program. Is like, I don't know what all these therapies mean, and I don't know exactly what they are. Of course, I learned them, did a test on them, but to retain that information to be able to deliver it to clients. And I just want to say that, if this sounds overwhelming, it's like, oh my God, that's so much to know and to offer and learn. That again, it's this incremental process rather than a place you just magically arrive at, or a place that's not possible to get to. It is totally possible to get to.
That's just it. And every session's different, every client's different, every day is different, every weather during the day is different with that client and their energy and the pressure in the air. There are so many variables going on that we can talk about forever. But how can you help hold the space for them, to help them feel seen and heard with what is going on in their lives that they feel called to talk about that might help them in some way?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something beautiful in that this work is all about, and I think makes it special.
Mm-hmm.
Unique.
Yeah. I was going to say, what a gift. What a gift. Some people might think that this work is burdensome, or how could you hold people through all of that stuff? Oh, that sounds so overwhelming. And I think when you learn those proper energetic emotional boundaries, it's, and if you're someone who loves human connection, some days I'm like, how am I even paid for this? This is wonderful. I could see myself doing this until I'm on my deathbed. It's a wise old woman continuing to hold people in all that they are. Yeah.
I love that. And there's something just so great about that. And if I would have understood that, 10, 12, 15 years ago, I would have been dumbfounded and blown away that it was even, say, possible, because I was depressed, because I was anxious, because I was unsure of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are, continuing the journey to learn and grow about this thing called life for ourselves, commit to it, to also then help others feel seen and heard in the many different ways they may show up, that maybe you showed up like at one point too, or will not, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Or still do.
Right. Or still do, or aren't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I had a client recently let me know that they felt very inspired because although they don't know my personal life, there's been times I've showed up in session where they could sense that I was holding something or moving through a life transition or whatever it was. And they're saying, and you are where you are now. So like you must be doing something, to aspire to over there or what have you. But it was a moment of like feeling seen myself, that wow, yeah, my struggles that I continue to experience even now don't make me less worthy or capable of sitting in this seat of holding others and what they're going through. If anything, again, it brings more of that humanness in it, and that we're just fellow human beings walking each other home.
Yeah, that's just it. Maybe we're going to look back at this and laugh and say, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to know what myself or yourself thinks about, say, this conversation in 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. I'm sure lots more life experience will be like, yeah, maybe we didn't totally know that yet.
Right. And there's this whole like ego play of like, how do we know this? Well, considering the last 10 years of our human experience and both doing the professional counseling diploma program and working into our own practices in our own unique ways, we're pulling upon, I think, those experiences as we look back and learning from them and also looking forward. And I think both of us being open to what more is to come to help our journey to grow in whatever that journey is for us, that we don't know exactly maybe what it'll be, but having faith in the universe and it having our back. Great book, by the way. The universe has our back. And that being, there and trying not to get too ahead of ourselves, I guess.
Totally reminds me of like, just the tendency we have as humans to constantly be setting the goalpost further ahead instead of acknowledging where we are. Like when I imagine where I want to be, I'm very far from it. When I look at where I've come from, very far from it. But can I just remove those out of the equation and just embrace where I am now? Which I think is one of the hardest parts about being human, is being in the present moment. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Yeah.
Through and through. I couldn't agree more. It's difficult being in this moment. And Eckhart Tolle has a great book, The Power of Now, talking about this thing, and many spiritual people and academics and so on talk about this whole idea. But from, I think, not to take thoughts too much out of your own mind or my own, but that's what this is kind of all about, is how can we enjoy the journey of life and help it and heal it and love it more moving forward for ourselves. Because that's probably all we have is the present moment, at least, right?
It is. That tomorrow and yesterday do not exist. They're not in existence.
Where are they, Victoria? Where are they?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question, but yeah, I really like embracing that there is only right now, because we don't know. We don't know if, it might be a bleak perspective, but like we don't know if we're going to get hit by a car, or if there's going to be some natural disaster, or like we have no idea. And I think that's such an encouragement to just embrace the now. Yeah.
I agree. And to anyone listening, if anxiety is coming up for you while we talk about this, that's totally normal.
Yeah.
Because the future and our thoughts of it can often bring us anxiety in the present moment.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. And that it is a survival mechanism to stay in the past or the future. And that beyond just a simple mindset shift, there also is a foundational somatic nervous system piece to it. And that if we're experiencing that activation, like there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a part of our physiology, and something that we actually don't have complete control over in each moment, and something that we shift gradually with time and practice.
I agree. There's such a funny interplay of nervous system and mind and soul in all of that. When we think about the future, the anxiety it brings our thoughts, or the anxious thoughts that we might have about the idea of the future, and our brain not knowing much difference between that future vision or narrative versus this moment.
Yes. Yeah. And in somatic therapy, we talk about orienting. Can we be present to the moment? There's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, can we start to notice the objects in the room, the colors? Can we become aware that we are in a space enclosed by walls, or even if you're outside, that there's no immediate threat or danger? Because that anxiety is the survival response, that there is a potential threat. So can we learn to orient to the present moment, which again takes practice and time, especially if we're wired for survival, wired to respond in that way?
Yeah.
to really take in on a cellular level that like we are safe.
Yeah.
There is no immediate threat.
Exactly.
Which is a lot easier said than done.
Such is true. There's that fight, there's that flight, there's that fawn. There's so many ways in which we conduct and show up in our lives because we are animals.
Mm-hmm.
We're animals trying to survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if that's the baseline of our nature, and we have an interesting way of nurture from our upbringing, from our parents or guardians, all of that combined to show up how we are comfortably in our bodies as a soul, within our nervous systems, with our brain as a tool and our heart beating. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. A lot more to take in, a lot more dynamic than just the mind, which I think is where many of us just solely exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Definitely a lot of food for thought there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or not. That's subjective, I guess. It depends on who you ask.
I'm sure we could speak so much more to it and all these ideas.
Yes, I agree. With that, we should probably close it up soon.
Yeah.
So, what do you have going on in your life, Victoria? What do you plan on doing in the next year within your own practice or work that you'd like to share? And how can people contact you if they want to see you as a counselor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people can find me at on Instagram at Embodied Life Wellness, and perhaps you can put these deets in the notes, in the show notes. Also, my website, embodiedlifewellness.ca, has all my contact information there. And in terms of the next year, I have a few ideas. But something that's very exciting that is already happening. I recently graduated from a parts work course, um, actually with B, who started the school, and it was awesome, so good. I had already started exploring parts work in the past year personally, and from my personal exploration, bringing it in with clients, prefacing it with, I'm not trained in this, but let's try this on because it's been really cool. And one of the things B said that I am really starting to witness now personally, and even with clients only implementing it for the past month or two, is that it is really effective at healing PTSD, complex PTSD, and shame. There is something about the externalization of parts work in the way that we connect with ourselves in this different way that is really exciting. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's changed the way that I work and the way that I practice, and clients are also really enjoying it. So that's really fulfilling. So it also pairs really beautifully with the somatic and nervous system work, which is something that is already near and dear to my heart in a way that I really value practicing. So them together is really exciting me and kind of getting the juices flowing in terms of how I can provide this kind of work to people who maybe can't afford one-on-one sessions. So I'm showing up more online now on social media, sharing more tools, more practices, as well as dreaming up some courses and programs myself that are more accessible than one-on-one sessions. So really looking forward to that. And just continuing to do my own inner work. We're heading into summer, which is the best time here on the Sunshine Coast and even just the West Coast. It's beautiful over here. So looking forward to lots of nature time and camping and paddleboarding and all that good stuff.
I love it. I love it. Connecting with the body, the mind, constantly learning, being a student of all the teachings that can come from life, and helping others feel more seen and heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creating.
cheers to creating. We'll cheers our teas and close up the podcast. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Thank you for having me. Oh, my
Ooh,
pleasure. Oh, yeah. Ding.
All right. Take care and be well.
Okay, you too.